The ocean is a world of extremes, awe-inspiring beauty, terrifying power, and unexpected humor. We're bringing you the ultimate compilation of insane moments at sea, featuring everything from heart-stopping near-death experiences to side-splitting encounters with marine life. Prepare to be amazed, shocked, and thoroughly entertained as we showcase the ocean's most incredible and unforgettable moments.
Then we have the Ghost River of the Black Sea. I love a good mystery, as we all know, but riddle me this. How can a river flow underwater? That is some crazy mythical talk right there. Deep under the Black Sea there is a river that was discovered only 9 years ago, but has likely flown for hundreds of years. The river looks extremely haunting indeed, and even has trees growing beside it, and a cascading waterfall. The river was found 60 meters deep, and it is massive. It's 350 times greater than the UK's River Thames, and 10 times bigger than Europe's biggest river, the Rhine. What's happening down there? River. Coming in at number 9, this actually makes me really sad, we have the Titanic's ghost shoes. Okay, it's time for some real talk, so brace yourselves. As we know, the Titanic infamously sank in 1912 after striking an iceberg, and 1,500 souls perished in the aftermath, mostly because there weren't enough lifeboats to save those on board. A lot of people literally went down with the ship, and they sank with it in its 2 halves, which are now 12,000 feet down at the bottom of the ocean. That's over 2 miles down. So you would expect that the ship would be absolutely littered with skeletons, and it was for a while, but not anymore. The first time the Titanic wreck was found and explored by divers was in 1986, over 70 years after it had sunk. Movie director James Cameron made a handful of trips down there to the wreck when he was researching and then filming the Titanic movie. When the movie director was asked about the macabre state of the ship, where the bodies are and such, he revealed that actually all of the corpses of the victims have disappeared. Why? Well, it seems that skeletons dissolve very quickly under pressure, and the pressure over 2 miles down into the sea is very, very high indeed. Hauntingly though, while the bodies may have disintegrated, what is left is the pairs of shoes that they were wearing when they died, and they are absolutely everywhere. So why is that? It's because the shoes back then were treated with tannic acid, which has served to protect them from dissolving. Have a listen to this clip.
A pair of women's shoes?
Yeah.
Next to a pair of girls' shoes. These were people.
These were people. Those shoes got to the bottom.
Every pair of shoes down there serves as a haunting reminder and a grave marker for where the humans felt their final resting place. I honestly think about the ghost shoes of the Titanic a lot. Speaking of a shipwreck, at number 8 we have the world's oldest shipwreck. That we know about, anyway. That's kind of the beauty, right? We think that one thing's old, but then we find another thing, and we just keep on progressing. And I love life because of that. Hurrah. In 2018, divers made an incredible discovery a mile below the surface of the Black Sea. The Black Sea again, we've already heard about the Black Sea on this list. What is going on in this spooky stretch? This particular section of the ocean was just off the coast of Bulgaria, where divers discovered an ancient Greek vessel thought to date back 2,400 years. Can you even believe it? That's older than most cities in Europe. The 23-meter long boat has been preserved by a lack of oxygen on the seabed, which has meant that its mast and its rudders and all the other shippy bits are still looking decidedly shippy. Professor John Adams from the Maritime Archaeology Project said, "A ship surviving intact from the classical world, lying over 2 kilometers down in the water, is something that I would never have believed possible." Well, believe it. Coming into number 7, we have the lost cities. There have been many cities that have been lost to the ocean. The ancient city of Atlantis is somewhat of a legend and it's never been found, but there are plenty of ancient cities that do officially lie in observable ruins. Heraklion, for example, lies off the coast of Egypt near the mouth of the famous River Nile. It was found in the year 2000 by underwater archaeologist Frank Godot, but prior to that, it was thought that, like Atlantis, the city was just a work of lore. It is connected with legends of Heracles and Helen of Troy after all. Have a look at some of the ancient statues found strewn across the seabed. Honestly, how utterly haunting. Some of the artifacts have now been raised from the ocean, where they've been hidden for an entire millennia. As ocean levels rise on Earth, how many other cities will meet a similar fate? That's kind of why sustainability is such an integral focus at this point in history. So from lost cities and old ships, we have what could be the world's oldest computer. Coming into number 6, we have the mysterious Antia Mechanism. Yay, I said it right. This ancient Greek analog computer was used to predict astronomical positions and solar eclipses. It's thought that this computer was used as a calendar with which to track the 4-year cycles of the old Olympic Games. The mechanism was lost for 2,200 years on the world's second oldest shipwreck. The artifact was initially discovered in 1901 when Greek sponge divers found an encrusted greenish lump, but 75 years later into its future, its true nature began to be revealed. Now we know that the artifact contained over 30 handmade cogs and could nearly accurately track the movement of planets and constellations. The discovery goes to show that the ancient Greeks knew so much more than we thought that they did. Coming into number 5, we have deep sea monsters. Okay, so we're around the middle spot on this list, so I think now is a good time to tell you that actually nature is demented. Like, it's proper crazy down there. We discover thousands of new marine species each year, and well, as you know, the Earth is 80% water, so who knows what else is lurking down there. What we do know is that actually the ocean is filled with an absolute horror show, an absolute lineup of monsters. Here I am bopping in to just name a few that will ruin your day. Meet the sarcastic fringehead shark, the humpback anglerfish, the northern stargazer, the vampire eel, the giant squid, the pelican eel, and of course everyone's mate the blobfish. I'm telling you, it's dark, cold and creepy down there. Coming into number 4, we have Marianas Sounds. Did I say that the ocean was dark, cold and creepy? I guess I missed out the fact that the ocean is also filled with a veritable horror score of mysterious sounds. Marianas Trench is the name given to the deepest part of the ocean. Usual ocean depths are around 2-ish miles down, but mate, let me tell you this, Marianas Trench off the coast of Guam is nearly 7 miles down. No. What do you think lives down there? Sea cucumbers and strange sounds. In 2014, scientists heard a weird pinging sound coming from the waters around the super deep super creep. That's what I'm calling Marianas Trench from now on. Have a listen and let me know what you think this unidentified sound is. First, nobody, including our mates the NOAA, were too sure what it was, but now a team of researchers from Oregon State University have decided that the alien-like sound could be a new call from a baleen whale. Still though, this is unconfirmed, and I don't feel good about deep sea sounds, especially when I've seen some of the horrors that live down there. Coming into number 3, we have unexploded nukes. Oh, you didn't know there were lost and discarded nuclear weapons across the world's oceans? Hate to tell you, but yeah, there are. A lot, in fact, a whole host of non-nuclear but still very dangerous bombs are also hanging out unexploded in the deep. Sorry to ruin your day. One fun example, in December 1965, a plane carrying a Megatron nuclear warhead rolled, yes rolled, off the deck of an aircraft carrier into the Sea of Japan, where it stays forevermore, or until it surfaces. Ugh. There is a 30 kilotron fat man in the Pacific somewhere too, but Rebecca, this is a list about found things, not lost things. Sure, but I'm saying one day they will turn up. Maybe in a sleepy seaside village near you. A big boy bomb washed up in North Carolina in November 2018. That beast was from World War II, 70 plus years, and she found her way to the shore. Honestly, the thought terrifies me. Coming into number 2, we have the spaceship of the Baltic Sea. Some call it the Baltic Sea anomaly, others call it a crash-landed UFO that sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and some people think it is the spit of the Millennium Falcon. In 2014, an image of the strange object was circulated by professional divers. It seems that the mysterious object is raised 13 feet above the seabed and is surrounded by a very mysterious rock formation. What is it? Well, the website Snopes thinks that it's a big fat fake, but others aren't so sure. Finally, coming into number 1 of our scariest things found in the ocean, we have 100 plus years of human waste. Many of us have seen the tragic videos of wildlife caught up in human trash dumped in the ocean, or the plastic straw in the crying turtle's nose, but actually this horrifying stuff is really just the tip of the iceberg. It seems like we have a disconnect about where our trash goes. When you throw something away, we just forget about it because it isn't our responsibility anymore, but actually it doesn't mean that that thing stops existing. It is estimated that by the year 2050 there will be as much plastic in the ocean by weight as there is marine life, which is actually mental. Ocean pollution is a real issue. Some of our waste has been lost to the deep sea, some of it is still floating on the top of the ocean. Have a look at this shocking image of plastic floating in the Caribbean. More facts for you. 5 trillion pieces of microplastics are currently in the ocean, with 1 whole truckload added each minute. Jack Finch as well as Che and I were talking about how disgusting the throwaway culture we live in is today, but luckily there are apps like Buns that are looking to tackle the issues and encouraging us to trade things that we don't want anymore rather than throwing them away. But of course we need to be more aware of things like non-recyclable coffee cups and plastic bottles, if not we're literally going to poison our water, and like, to put it lightly, that would suck.
The USS Thresher. This was a US Navy attack submarine that sank on April 10th, 1963. The sub was cutting edge for the time, the latest in submarine technology, but during a deep sea dive test off the coast of Massachusetts, something went very wrong. Several garbled messages were received on the surface, and then nothing. So a search and rescue mission was launched, but nothing turned up. The sub wasn't discovered until 1964, torn to pieces on the sea floor. What's believed to have happened was that a pipe or a weld in the engine room failed, causing water to flood in. And when this happened, the submarine's reactor shut down, leaving it without power to move. The crew tried to use the ballast tanks to float back up, but the air system was toast. Moisture in the system turned into ice and blocked the valves, so the submarine couldn't rise, and with no way to stop it, the Thresher just kept sinking. The deeper it went, the more pressure it faced, until the hull finally would have given in. It was crushed by the intense pressure, and all 129 people on board were killed instantly. La Minerve. For decades, this was probably the most mysterious submarine disaster in history. Everyone knew something bad had happened, obviously, but no one knew where the sub actually was. La Minerve was a French submarine that mysteriously vanished in 1968. In fact, it's one of 4 subs that went missing that year. The sub had been on a routine training mission in the Mediterranean Sea when it suddenly disappeared without a trace. A search and rescue was launched, with ships and aircraft scouring the sea for any sign of the missing sub, but they found nothing. For decades, the fate of the submarine was a complete mystery. Families of the crew members were left in limbo, never knowing what happened to their loved ones. It wasn't until 2019, more than 50 years after it disappeared, that the sub was finally found by a company called Ocean Infinity. It was lying on the seabed about 45 kilometers off the coast of France. So what exactly caused the submarine to sink? It looked like there had been a catastrophic implosion, but the exact cause is still a mystery, and we'll likely never know. Another one of the mysterious submarine disappearances in 1968 was the USS Scorpion. The Scorpion was a US Navy submarine. It was on a routine patrol in the Atlantic Ocean when it suddenly disappeared. There was no distress call, no warning whatsoever. All that was known was that the captain had said they were closing in on a Soviet sub. It wasn't until several months later that wreckage from the Scorpion was found on the ocean floor, but the discovery raised more questions than answers. What caused the Scorpion to sink? Why did it happen so suddenly without any warning signs? Some think there could have been mechanical failure, but this was the Cold War, so most people think it had something to do with that. Next up, we have the HMS Thetis. On June 1st, 1939, the submarine was on a trial run in Liverpool Bay. Part of the trial was, of course, a test dive. Now, a lot went wrong here. First of all, the sub was packed. There were 103 men on board, double the amount that the vessel had been designed for. Most were sailors, but there were also engineers from the company that built the sub. The Thetis tried to dive, but it wasn't able to. It was too light. Lieutenant Frederick Woods, not knowing that the torpedo tubes were already full of water, let more in to try and make the vessel heavier, but there was a problem. A painter had accidentally blocked a crucial valve with enamel, making it seem safe to open the inner torpedo door. This caused a rush of water into the sub, sending it nose first to the seabed. It took hours for the SOS alarm to reach the Navy, and when they finally did arrive, things just got worse. They tried to lift the vessel, but the wire snapped, and the sub sank once again. In the end, there were only 4 survivors. 99 men were still trapped inside. It wasn't until 4 months later that the submarine was raised and the bodies were recovered. Next up, we have the Ming 361 disaster. The Ming 361 submarine was on a mission, part of China's strategy to secure its maritime borders against the US Pacific Fleet. It was stationed in the Yellow Sea off China's northeast coast. It was primed for exercises, but things didn't go as planned. During a routine maneuver in April of 2003, disaster struck as the submarine's diesel engine malfunctioned, a glitch which quickly turned deadly. The engine's failure led to a carbon monoxide nightmare, sucking the oxygen out of the cramped vessel. The vessel did surface, but was basically a tomb. It drifted for 10 days before Chinese fishermen came across the vessel on April 25th. The entire crew was found slumped over their stations. The Kursk was the pride of the Russian Navy until a tragic incident in 2000. On August 12th of that year, during a naval exercise in the Barents Sea, the Kursk, a nuclear-powered Oscar second-class submarine, was out to prove its might, armed to the teeth with torpedoes, but little did anyone know this would be its final journey. At 7:29 a.m., a seismic jolt, 1.5 on the Richter scale, was detected. 2 minutes and 14 seconds later, a massive quake, 250 times stronger, sent shockwaves across northern Europe. Nobody knew it at the time, but the Kursk had met its fate. For 12 hours, the Russian Navy danced around the disaster, pretending all was well. In reality, though, the Kursk was laying on the seabed, its crew fighting this losing battle for survival. Rescue attempts were made, but all had failed, and finally the truth came out. There had been a catastrophic torpedo explosion. There were no survivors. Next up, we have the Russian submarine, the Leric. Unlike other submarines, the Leric wasn't a traditional vessel with a long hull. Instead, it was a special kind of submersible designed for deep-sea research and rescue. With its nuclear-powered engines and titanium spheres, it was a marvel of engineering. Apparently, I don't really know what titanium spheres are, but that's just what I read. During one of its missions in the Arctic Ocean in 2019, something went terribly wrong. There was a fire on board, 250 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The crew found themselves in a desperate situation. Submarines are already tight spaces, so as much as they tried to contain the fire, it just quickly spread. Now, fortunately, unlike the Kursk, the submarine was salvaged, and not everyone died here. Some were rescued, but the toll was heavy. 14 crew members died in the fire, including high-ranking officers and captains of other submarines. As for how the fire started, we don't really know. There aren't a lot of details, at least not publicly available. The Russian government didn't provide a whole lot of information about the incident. Next up, we once again have another Russian sub. On April 7th, 1989, the Soviets K-8 embarked on its maiden voyage in the Barents Sea, but it would never return. It's still sitting at the bottom of the sea to this very day. A short circuit in the engine room sparked a fire, forcing the submarine to surface. Unfortunately, some of the crew died in the fire, and many did manage to escape, but at least half of them died in the icy waters. As flames consumed the vessel, it sank to the ocean floor. Expeditions in the mid-90s revealed that the K-8 was a radioactive nightmare, too. Its hull was severely damaged, and its nuclear arsenal was a ticking time bomb, and it seems like things have only gotten worse. Sea samples have been taken in recent years with abnormally high radiation levels close to the wreck, 100,000 times more radioactive than normal. The ARA San Juan was an Argentine Navy diesel-electric submarine that vanished without a trace off the coast of Argentina on November 15th of 2017. It was on a routine patrol in the South Atlantic Ocean and was en route to its home port when something went wrong and it suddenly disappeared. For days, there was no sign of the submarine. Search efforts were launched with ships and aircraft from multiple countries. Hopes continued to dwindle, though, as the search and rescue for the 44 people on board eventually became a search just for the missing wreck. Finally, on November 16th, 2018, a year after the sub had gone missing, the San Juan was discovered in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The submarine's hull had imploded. Debris from the sub was found scattered on the ocean floor off the coast of Patagonia. And finally, we of course have the OceanGate Titan submersible. This was a wild news story last year. For those who somehow didn't hear about this at the time or just need a refresher, I will refresh you. Stockton Rush was the CEO and co-founder of OceanGate, a privately owned deep-sea tourism company. The Titan was a submersible which had been used to tour the wreck of the Titanic before. There was a lot of controversy surrounding this thing, though. A lot of deep-sea experts looked at the Titan and were like, that is clearly not up to standard. That is a death trap waiting to happen. Well, the Titan's final dive would be on June 18th of 2023. There were 5 men on board: Paul Henry Narjolet, a French deep-sea explorer and Titanic enthusiast, a British billionaire named Hamish Harding, a Pakistani-British billionaire and businessman, Shahzada Dawood and his son, and finally Stockton Rush himself. The Titan began its descent, and everything seemed pretty routine, but about an hour and 45 minutes into the dive, all contact was lost between the submersible and its support vessel on the surface, and then it didn't surface at all. Days went by as a massive search was launched. There was all this speculation as to what had happened. Was the submersible destroyed? Had they managed to surface but just drifted off somewhere? Time was of the essence, because if they had sunk to the bottom, they'd be quickly running out of air. It was a ticking clock, and finally though, the Titan was found, at least what was left of it. It looked like the small vessel had imploded almost as soon as communication had ceased. The implosion would have taken less than a millisecond. Here's something you gotta think about when exploring the deep sea: earthquakes and tsunamis. Getting caught up in a natural disaster while deep underwater is incredibly dangerous. Astronauts have a lot to worry about, but earthquakes aren't one of them. You don't gotta worry about the Earth's crust shifting when you're not on Earth. Seismic activity beneath the ocean doesn't just trigger destruction on land, it also triggers massive waves, which can of course cause serious problems out at sea. First, you've got underwater earthquakes, giant shudders that happen deep beneath the ocean's surface when tectonic plates shift and grind against each other. We're talking about seismic waves that can shake the ocean floor like a rag doll. So, if you're diving or exploring the deep sea when one of these earthquakes hits, not good. You'd be tossed around with no control over where you're going or what's gonna happen next. And these underwater earthquakes can trigger tsunamis, massive walls of water traveling at high speed, swallowing up everything in their path. Ships, submarines, entire cities along coastlines. Tsunamis are a nightmare scenario for researchers out at sea. Imagine a tsunami barreling towards you from miles away, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. You're caught in this storm of swirling water and debris with no way out, and even if you manage to escape the immediate danger, the aftermath of an underwater earthquake can be just as deadly. The seabed can shift and change in an instant, creating underwater landslides and whirlpools. Now let's talk more about landslides though. These can also be brought on by methane hydrate deposits. Methane hydrate deposits are basically chunks of ice that trap methane gas inside of them. These deposits are stable under high pressure and low temperatures, but when these conditions change, like if the ocean, say, is warming up or if the pressure drops, the methane hydrates can break down and release the methane gas. There are tons of these deposits sitting under the seabed, just waiting to be disturbed, and if that happens, the methane gas shoots up to the surface like a rocket, creating massive bubbles that can swallow up ships and cause explosions. And as I mentioned, there's the landslide part. Methane hydrate deposits can help stabilize the seafloor, so when they break down, it can lead to underwater landslides. These landslides can be massive, a bit like like underwater avalanches. Another one of the many dangers of the sea, rogue waves, aka freak waves, killer waves, or monster waves, and they live up to their name. These are massive waves that can appear without warning, so pretty big threats to ships. You could be cruising along and enjoying the salty breeze when out of nowhere a massive wall of water, taller than a 10-story building, comes crashing down on you. They can appear seemingly out of nowhere in the middle of calm seas, and I wasn't exaggerating before. They can be huge. We're talking over 100 feet tall sometimes, which is insane. That's like a skyscraper just suddenly rising up from the ocean. What makes them so scary though is that unpredictability. They don't follow the usual patterns of waves, so sailors can't really prepare for them, at least not entirely. In one moment, you could be sailing smooth, and the next, you're facing towering walls of water that could easily capsize even large ships. And scientists still don't fully understand what causes rogue waves. One of the most dangerous sections of Earth's waters is the Sargassum Sea. The Sargassum Sea is like this floating jungle in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but instead of trees, it's made of a unique type of seaweed called sargassum. This seaweed forms thick mats that can stretch for miles, and it creates this tangled maze. It's a bit eerie. It's kind of like a big floating desert. There's not much else around it except for the seaweed, and that sounds kind of peaceful, but for sailors, it's a different story. Navigating through all that sargassum is actually proven to be pretty dangerous. The Sargassum Sea has a very dark reputation. It's kinda known for swallowing up ships, and over the centuries there have been all these tales of sailors getting trapped in the area, the ships unable to move as they're slowly engulfed by the seaweed. Sounds awful. Underwater caves. Lots of divers have died exploring them. They're labyrinths beneath the surface of the ocean, and sure, they're exciting places to explore. They can be beautiful, but they're also packed with dangers. First off, navigating through an underwater cave is like trying to find your way through a pitch black maze. There are tunnels and chambers crisscrossing in all directions, and if you're not careful, it's easy to get lost. Imagine swimming deeper and deeper into the darkness with no idea which way is up or down. Then you have the risk of getting trapped. Some caves have narrow passages that can squeeze you in, and if you're not careful, you could find yourself wedged with no way out. Another danger of the deep sea are blue holes. These are basically underwater sinkholes, and they can be deceivingly beautiful because they're also incredibly dangerous. Giant gaping chasms in the ocean floor plunging down into the depths. You can see them from the sky. They're often darker blue in color, contrasting with the surrounding water, and they're dark because of how deep they are, for one, and sunlight can't reach the bottom. These holes vary in size and depth. Some extend several hundred feet below the ocean surface. The scariest thing about blue holes is that a lot of them are uncharted territory. Unlike on land, where we have maps and signs to help guide us, most blue holes are unexplored. You never know what you might encounter down there. Who knows what could be living in these areas, for one, but aside from that, there could be dangerous currents, and things do live in some of these blue holes. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize, for example, has been explored, and there are tons of different shark species living down there. So these aren't places you can just go for a casual dive. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, there are these eerie chimneys called black smokers. These are hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor that emit superheated water, which is rich in minerals. But the extreme temperatures and the toxic chemicals can make these areas incredibly dangerous. They're a bit like underwater volcanoes, but instead of spewing lava, they belch out super hot water loaded with minerals. They're found near the edges of tectonic plates, where the Earth's crust is pulling apart, and when cold seawater seeps down into the cracks and meets hot magma below, it gets heated up and then shoots back out of the seafloor in these towering columns of scalding water. The water coming out can be hotter than boiling. We're talking temperatures that would cook you alive. And if that's not scary enough, they're also chock full of toxic chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, which can knock you out cold with just one whiff. Not that you'd really be swimming around down there anyway, to be fair, but still. So the conditions in these areas are pretty extreme, but there is actually life that can survive around black smokers, like tube worms, shrimp. There's a whole ecosystem down there that that's adapted to thrive in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth, which is pretty cool. Drowning is said to be one of the worst ways to go, and one easy way to drown, just get caught in a giant swirling vortex of water, a whirlpool. These are kind of like the black holes of the ocean, less mysterious of course, but incredibly deadly, and unlike black holes, which are way too far away from us to cause any harm, even for astronauts, whirlpools are everywhere. One of the most infamous whirlpools is called the Moskstraumen off the coast of Norway. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Its currents are strong enough though to suck down ships, which can be torn apart like paper. Whirlpools can be massive, stretching for miles across, so if you happen to stumble on one while sailing or swimming, eesh. That's all I'm gonna say is just eesh. And whirlpools can be unpredictable. They can form out of nowhere with no warning signs to let you know they're coming. So even if you're the most experienced sailor or swimmer, at the end of the day, we're all still at the mercy of Mother Nature. For all the terrifying creatures that are known to exist, there are also the mysterious ones, creatures that science hasn't documented, but people have claimed to see, and as intriguing as that is, it's just another one of the many reasons the deep sea is such a dangerous place. There are tons of creatures we could talk about. Let's take a creature that doesn't get talked about a whole lot though, a creature that's been dubbed the Moa MOA. The first documented sighting of the Moa MOA was on June 8th of 1890 on Great Sandy Island in Western Australia by a school teacher named Selina Lovell and a small group of her students. The creature was reported to be this huge monster turtle fish thing measuring about 30 feet in length. The creature was described as having a domed shaped body, almost like a turtle shell, about 8 feet across by 5 feet high, with an elongated neck and a 12-foot long tail. The creature's rounded jaws measured what looked to be about 18 inches. The head and tail almost looked like they belonged to two different animals. Lovell didn't get a good glimpse of the creature's feet, but locals have described the Moa MOA having almost alligator-like feet. Lovell watched the creature for half an hour from only about 5 feet away. Afterward, the Moa MOA turned towards the sea, lifting its body and tail above the water, tossing fish into the air, and then swam back down into the deeper water. And finally, I just gotta mention ghosts. Now, I know that sounds a bit silly. Most astronauts and scientists aren't really all that concerned about ghosts, but I mean, just think of all the ships that have sank or gone missing entirely, all the planes that have gone down and sank to the bottom of the water never to be seen again, all the battles that have taken place out at sea. Unlike the black void of space surrounding us here on Earth, our planet's waters are full of life, but also full of death. There are so many immediate dangers, so much unexplored territory. It's no wonder there are so many tales of ghost ships sailing aimlessly across the sea, or tortured spirits rising from the water to drag unsuspecting sailors into the depths. There could be tons of life out there in space and plenty of dangers we can't even fathom. But until we're able to venture out far enough, it seems like taking a trip to the moon may be a safer one than venturing down into the deepest, darkest depths of our very own planet.
Alright, starting off our list today, we have human remains. Yep, on Friday, April 26th of this year, 2024, deputies from the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office were alerted after the body of a woman was seen floating in the ocean just off of Fort Bragg in California. The deputies, along with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the California Department of State Parks, retrieved the body of a young female from the water. Unfortunately, the identity of the deceased remains unknown, as there were no identifying marks or characteristics on the body to aid in determining the identity of the individual. Along with this, the cause of death has not yet been determined for the young woman, and so a coroner's investigation has been initiated to help determine both her identity and cause of death. A police investigation is also underway to determine how the woman made her way into the water and whether or not foul play was at all involved in the incident.
Next up, we have the mysterious Golden Orb. Back in 2023, scientists came across a strange golden blob deep in the North Pacific in the Gulf of Alaska. The thing was about 4 inches in diameter and was attached to a rock. The team was using remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, as part of NOAA's Seascape Alaska 5 expedition to explore deep water habitats. They have no idea what this thing is, but it was determined to be biological, so it was something. It wasn't man-made. There was also a small hole in the orb looking like something had gone in or come out, which is definitely freakier. There's a live stream of the researchers picking up the thing with the ROV, and they joke about how the discovery feels like the start of a horror movie. Using a gentle suction device on the ROV, they carefully removed the orb and brought it to the surface for closer examination on their ship, but other than the fact that the thing was biological, they still have no idea what it is. Carrie Howell, a deep-sea ecologist, stated the orb could be a new species or an unknown stage of an existing one.
Next up, we have the Unicum, an entirely new species of sea cucumber that is equal parts fascinating and nausea-inducing. As you can see from the image, this animal is see-through, making its digestive tracts completely visible. Lucky us. The animal acts almost as an ocean floor vacuum cleaner, locating and consuming sediment that has settled in the depths of the ocean, sediment that has passed through the stomachs of multiple other sea creatures before making its way in what appears to be the large and only intestine of the Unicum. Unpleasant to say the least. Anyways, the Unicum was captured using a remote operated vehicle which was sent down to the seafloor of the Pacific Ocean so that marine scientists may see what kind of things are lurking in the deep. The Unicum was among the largest animals found during the expedition, and it is assumed by researchers that its long tail that you can see is used to maneuver throughout the dark ocean floor.
Next up, we have Barbie pigs. So it wasn't just the Unicum the researchers found, there were tons of new species discovered in the Clarion-Clipperton zone of the Pacific. The team was led by deep-sea researcher at London's Natural History Museum, Dr. Adrian Glover. They were studying life at 13 to 16,000 feet down below, and along with the Unicumbers, they also found these odd-looking creatures. Super strange, alien-looking things for sure. Like most of the life this deep below the surface often is, oddly kinda cute in a bizarro kinda way though, at least to me. Maybe it's because it's pink, kind of reminds me of Patrick Star or like Kirby or something. One PhD student, Bethany Fleming, suggested they dub the creature the Barbie Pig, and the team agreed. And if you're thinking it's because they had just watched the Barbie movie on the flight over and just had it on their minds, you'd be right. That is exactly the reason.
Next up, we have the Blob, a large mass of relatively warm water located in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of North America. It was discovered in late 2013 and continued to spread until 2015. Basically, it's a massive marine heat wave that lasted for over 700 days and resulted in the deaths of an estimated 1.2 million seabirds and countless marine animals. The phenomenon, nicknamed the Blob, is assumed by researchers to be the result of high-pressure systems and greenhouse gases, and it is also largely to blame for the decline in the humpback whale population and the decline of Pacific cod. It is an extremely strange phenomenon that is not fully explainable, but that is definitely worrying based on the sheer amount of detriment it has already caused and could continue to cause to marine life.
Next on the list, we have the true purpose of the expedition we talked about earlier, where all those strange new species of life were discovered. The team was studying the biodiversity in the Clarion-Clipperton zone because the area is going to be used for deep-sea mining, the mining of sea potatoes. But what exactly are sea potatoes? Well, they're actually pretty important to the future of battery-powered cars, amongst other things. Sea potatoes are the nickname for manganese nodules, black rocks that contain precious metals like cobalt, nickel, and manganese. The plan is to scoop these rocks up, bring them to the surface. The CCZ has the largest concentration of these precious materials in the entire world, so they needed to study the life down there to make sure the mining wouldn't disrupt the ecosystems and have too much of a negative influence.
Next up, we have the plastic bag. While a plastic bag hiding in your closet is neither shocking nor scary, unless of course you specifically removed it from your closet only to have it reappear days later, finding a plastic bag at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the ocean's deepest point, is pretty nerve-wracking. Why? Well, because it illustrates just how widespread pollution has become on our planet. I mean, no human has ever grazed the bottom of the ocean, but our trash certainly has. In 2018, while scanning through thousands of photos and videos from multiple devices located in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, looking for unseen oceanic discoveries, marine scientists came across something completely ordinary for a Sunday trip to the supermarket, but completely out of the ordinary for the untouched depths of the ocean. A plastic grocery bag, which has since become a symbol of our need to make change in order to protect some of the world's most delicate ecosystems.
Just last year, in the summer of 2023, an astrophysicist named Avi Loeb worked together with the US Space Command to haul over 700 small pieces of space debris from the sea, just off the coast of Manus Island. The debris consisted of fragments from a meteor that flew into Earth's atmosphere back in 2014. At the time, a US spy satellite saw them plummeting into the sea, but there was no further investigation until Loeb and some of his undergraduate students got their hands on the report and set out to see if they could haul the little space bits out of the water. The debris is in the form of these pocket-sized spheres containing rare elements like lanthanum, uranium, and large amounts of beryllium. Loeb made a statement to the press saying, quote, "This is the first time ever that humans have held materials from a large interstellar object in their hands," which is pretty cool. Never before have we had the opportunity to examine materials from an object like this that came from outside the solar system. It's a historic discovery. He also made a very interesting statement saying that, quote, "The possibility of it coming from alien hardware is more exotic, but it is a possibility. What we can say for sure is it's not from the solar system." Yeah, pretty amazing.
Next up, we have Amelia Earhart's plane. That's right, after 87 years, researchers at the ocean exploration company Deep Sea Vision believe they may have located the Lockheed 10E Electra that Amelia Earhart had flown while attempting to circumnavigate the globe after becoming the first woman to fly solo over the Atlantic Ocean and the first woman to fly solo across North America. She departed from Oakland, California and flew for 3 weeks, making various stops to rest and refuel. She was last seen in New Guinea, taking off for Howland Island, but unfortunately she never made it. It is believed her plane was lost over the Pacific, but with no substantial evidence, there was no way of knowing for sure. Until now, that is, because in January of this year, 2024, Deep Sea Vision claims to have captured sonar images of what they believe to be Earhart's aircraft, sitting comfortably at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean untouched and undisturbed for over 87 years. While it has not been confirmed that what the company found is in fact Amelia Earhart's plane, the company does have plans to return to the site and use a remote-operated vehicle to confirm their findings sometime later this year before possibly bringing the object back up to the surface. So there's things to look forward to.
Finally, we have a giant underwater mountain. The Seamount was discovered in November of 2023 when researchers were mapping the seafloor off the coast of Guatemala. It's what remains of an ancient underwater volcano and sits 7,870 feet below the surface. Now, when I say giant, what exactly am I talking here? Well, try 5,250 feet tall. To put this into perspective, the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, is 2,720 feet tall, about half the size. So that's one giant volcano, and there are apparently tons of others that have yet to be discovered. Experts estimate there could be hundreds of thousands we haven't seen yet. And seamounts are actually, they serve a pretty important purpose for the ecosystems down there as well. They're home to plenty of life like sea corals, sponges, and other deep sea life. Tam Jah is the deepest blue hole in the entire world. Tam Jah means deep water in the Mayan language. It's located in Chetumal Bay off the southeastern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Recently, scientists discovered that this blue hole is much deeper than they previously thought, reaching a depth of 1,380 feet. Initially, the depth of Tam Jah was estimated to be around 900 feet, but that was with echo sounder mapping, a technique that uses sound waves to measure the distance to the ocean floor. It only gives a rough estimate of depth though. But more recently, researchers used what's called a CTD profiler. This instrument has sensors that measure water conductivity, temperature, and pressure. They lowered it into the blue hole on a cable to gather precise data, and the new measurements revealed just how deep this blue hole really is. And scientists are now pretty excited about what could be lurking down there. But Tam Ja isn't the only deep, dark, and dangerous blue hole in the world. Far from it. There are blue holes all over the ocean whose depths are even more mysterious than this one. Before the discovery of Tam Ja, the deepest blue hole in the world was thought to be the Dragon Hole in the South China Sea. The Dragon Hole, also known as the Eye of the South China Sea, is a pretty remarkable underwater sinkhole in the Paracel Islands. It reaches a depth of about 987 feet. This blue hole gets its name from local legends that speak of a dragon residing in its depths, which I really wish was true. Dragons are probably at the top of my list of mythical creatures that I just wish existed. Scientists have been intrigued by the Dragon Hole for decades. After it had first been discovered by local fishermen, researchers used a Video Ray Pro 4 to explore it, which is a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, and during these early explorations of the blue hole, they found over 20 previously undiscovered species of sea life. Next, we have the Black Hole of Andros. The Black Hole of Andros is an underwater sinkhole in the Bahamas. The hole is about 300 feet deep, so not as deep as most of the other holes on this list, but that's not what makes it so interesting. There's a drastic change in conditions as you go deeper here. Near the surface, the water is your typical clear, warm water of the Bahamas, but as you descend, there's a layer around 60 feet down that's completely devoid of oxygen and rich in hydrogen sulfide. This layer creates this kind of pinkish purple hue in the water. What's fascinating about this layer is that it mimics conditions believed to be similar to those of ancient Earth around 3.5 billion years ago. In this layer, scientists have found unique life forms that can actually survive without oxygen, so it makes for a pretty interesting place to study because it could help scientists understand more about early life on Earth. Probably goes without saying though that diving in the black hole of South Andros is very dangerous and strictly prohibited. But the Black Hole of Andros isn't the most dangerous blue hole in the world. That title goes to the Blue Hole of Dahab, aka the Red Sea Blue Hole in Egypt. There are more diving fatalities here than in any other diving site in the world. Between 1997 and 2012, there were an estimated 200 deaths at this diving site, and a lot of the danger here has to do with what's called the Arch, an 85-foot long submerged tunnel that's about 170 feet deep. The tunnel is really challenging and downright dangerous for less experienced divers. A big part of it comes down to breathing gas management. Any error along this tunnel and you can throw off the whole dive, and that can spell death. You may end up not having enough air to account for decompression stops on the way out and just run out of breathable air, which is terrifying. There's also a current that flows inward through the arch, which adds extra resistance, meaning some divers have just underestimated how long it actually takes to swim. The Red Sea Blue Hole is also rather infamous for the death of Yuri Lipsky, a Russian diving instructor who was carrying a camera on him at the time, so his last moments were caught on camera. It's an incredibly distressing video. I've watched it before, I've talked about it on the channel before at some point, but the video has also been used to help educate other divers, pointing out what he did wrong and how to avoid encountering a similar fate. Next, we head to the Czech Republic to see the deepest underwater cave in the entire world. It's really quite mind-blowing. A huge, deep hole filled with water going down way farther than you can see. The latest confirmed deepest depth in 2022 was measured to be 1,704 feet deep, but they believe it might be even deeper than that. The bottom still hasn't been reached, so who knows how far down it really goes, but it's estimated the abyss may be as deep as 2,600 to to 3,900 feet. The cave is in a place called the Hranes Karst, an area known for its unique limestone formations. Water has slowly dissolved the limestone over millions of years, creating this incredibly deep abyss. Once again, we head back to the Bahamas with the Sawmill Sink. This blue hole is known for its huge collection of fossils. It's packed with history. Over the years, divers have discovered an amazing array of fossils and artifacts that have helped them piece together what the region was like before the arrival of humans, which is really cool. They pulled up bones of extinct animals like the Bohemian tortoise and crocodile, which roamed the islands thousands of years ago. One of the reasons these discoveries are so well preserved is because of the unique environment inside this sinkhole. The water is layered with fresh water on top and salt water below. This layering creates this oxygen poor zone in the middle, which helps prevent decay and keeps things in fairly good condition. Besides animal bones, divers have also found ancient human remains and artifacts. Human remains definitely less fascinating than extinct animals to a scientist, but also a lot creepier. And it's back to the Bahamas with Dean's Blue Hole. This one plunges to a depth of around 663 feet. From above, it looks like a beautiful, deep blue circle surrounded by lighter turquoise waters. Pretty breathtaking, just like pretty much any blue hole. They all kind of look like that, but this is a popular freediving spot. Some of the world's best freedivers come here to test their limits and break records, but this kind of diving is not without its risks. One of the main dangers of Dean's Blue Hole is its depth. The deeper you go, the higher the pressure becomes, which can affect your body in serious ways. Divers can experience something called nitrogen narcosis, which is kind of like being intoxicated underwater. It makes you confused and disoriented. This is partly what led to the death of Yuri Lipsky, who we talked about earlier. Another risk is shallow water blackout, which happens when a diver loses consciousness during the ascent due to a lack of oxygen. This can be deadly if the diver isn't rescued quickly. And yes, these are dangers you'll run into at pretty much every diving site, but this is one of the most famous blue holes in the Bahamas, and a lot of people flock here not knowing the full extent of the risks. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize is a massive marine sinkhole over 300 meters across and 124 meters deep. This is probably one of the most famous blue holes in the entire world. Now, as for what's down there, it's never been fully mapped, but there have been a handful of expeditions, some successful, some unsuccessful. In 1971, a team of highly experienced divers collected stalactites from the blue hole and found that they had originally formed above ground, so they became submerged over time. In 2018, there was an expedition to map the cave systems of the blue hole. The scariest thing they found were the remains of 2 divers, 2 out of 3 that had gone missing while exploring years before. The Great Blue Hole is a bit of a tourist destination, at least for experienced scuba divers, but it can also be very dangerous. Next up, we have the mysterious Penia. So not a blue hole, but in 2016, scientists discovered, or rather rediscovered, a massive hole in Antarctica. This wasn't the first time the hole was observed either. It had kind of just reappeared. The hole is what is known as a Penia, which are areas of open water or very thin ice, completely surrounded by thick pack ice. They're still a bit of a mystery. But this Penia in the Weddell Sea is extra strange. See, most of these holes form close to the shore, but this one is way out there. It was first discovered in 1974, but by 1976 it had completely closed up. Cut to 40 years later though, and once again the hole opened up, and it's been continuing to grow. It's now larger than the entire state of Maryland. Why did it reappear? Scientists aren't sure. They're just collecting as much data as they can. They're assuming it'll continue to grow too. It's still not as large as it was in the 70s, but will it grow larger than it was back then, or will it close up again? We just gotta wait and see. Finally, we have the discovery of ancient DNA deep in the Scotia Sea. In 2019, a team from the International Ocean Discovery Program accidentally stumbled on something really cool. In the Scotia Sea, north of mainland Antarctica, the team discovered ancient DNA samples from microorganisms 584 feet beneath the sea floor. They studied these genetic samples, looking at damage patterns in the DNA to figure out just how old they were and how old was this DNA? Well, about 1 million years old. It's the oldest DNA ever discovered from seafloor sediments to date. Up until the point of this discovery, the oldest sedimentary ancient DNA ever discovered was about 650,000 years old. It's kind of hard to believe that DNA could be studied after sitting at the bottom of the sea for 1 million years, but it was actually surprisingly well preserved. Antarctica's low temperatures play a big role in this. The sun doesn't really reach all the way down there either, so the samples hadn't been affected by UV radiation. Now, the big question on everyone's mind is, what species did this DNA hail from? Well, they're still not sure, but they were able to figure out that it didn't come from a virus or bacteria. That would have been a bit of a letdown. No, this was DNA belonging to either a plant or, even more exciting, an animal.
Starting us off today, we have, of course, aliens. Now, before you click away, let me explain. Our world was formed over the course of billions of years, during which time countless comets and asteroids continuously collided with our planet. Scientists at NASA believe that it is these comets that brought water to planet Earth and filled our oceans. Why do they think this? Well, because of chemical markers found in our oceans. The isotopic levels of our ocean water are incredibly similar to some of the oldest meteorites in the solar system, which would be virtually impossible unless it was ancient meteorites who delivered the water to our planet in the first place. Here's the thing though, when the asteroids crashed on Earth and subsequently created our oceans, the water inside would have been accompanied by organic materials. You see where I'm going with this. Organic materials that have been evolving for the past 3.8 billion years. While it is quite possible that humans are a result of this biological material, it's also possible that we're not the only result. And considering only 5% of our oceans have been explored, I'd say it's pretty possible and maybe even probable that some kind of other unfathomable creature lurks below the depths of the deep seas. Not only that, but each time a new asteroid hits our oceans, I feel like it brings forward a whole new possibility of evolutionary life.
What's the scariest, most mind-boggling thing in space? Well, to my knowledge, it would have to be black holes. Now, luckily, all of them are way too far away to pose any real threat to us here on Earth, or even for astronauts out in space for that matter, but the deep sea has its own kind of version of black holes. Eddies, and they are not too far away to pose significant threats. Eddies are basically circular currents, sort of like a whirlpool, that form within the larger ocean currents. Eddies can be small or big, and when I say big, I mean some of them can actually be seen from space, which is pretty scary. Now, there's not as much mystery surrounding eddies as there is with actual black holes, of course. It's pretty obvious where you'd end up if you were dragged into one of these things, but arguably it would be scarier as well, because with a black hole, it's like, well, who knows really what's in there? Could be good. Probably not, but there's a possibility. With eddies, I mean, you just drown. Drowning is probably one of the worst ways to die. And that's the other horrifying thing about these massive sized ones. Nothing can escape, just like with a black hole. Anything caught up just gets sucked in. And if you're thinking you can just wait it out, maybe you can, but some of these whirlpools can last for hours, days, and in some cases, there have been ones that have been circulating for years.
So if we go back to the reason for water on Earth and take a moment to seriously consider the fact that the organic material brought to Earth by the same asteroids that brought us water have had 3.8 billion years to evolve, I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's pretty likely that it did. And it evolved into something NASA has kept us in the complete dark about. There have been rumors going around that during the 2022 Orpheus expedition, in which a NASA submersible traveled down into the uncharted depths of our oceans, they found something that they don't want us to know about. I mean, makes sense. It's not like this would be the first time that NASA has tried to keep something from the public. The submersible was deployed to explore the Hadal Zone, which is some 6,000 to 11,000 meters below sea level, and it includes the Mariana Trench. In fact, the Mariana Trench is just one of 30 subduction zones, or trench zones in simpler terms, that make up the Hadal. During NASA's 2022 mission, while while exploring the depths under the guise of getting a better understanding of how to explore the moon's oceans, it is believed that they stumbled across something massive and never seen before. Underwater megafauna, massive animals, which was actually confirmed by an astronaut by the name of Garrett Reisman, who claims to have seen the eye of one of the creatures, and he described it as being as big as a flying saucer. Interesting analogy from a NASA astronaut.
Alright, expanding on Hannah's point a bit, some stories have been floating around about NASA coming across disturbing creatures deep in the ocean's depths. NASA is taken to exploring some of the deepest waters on Earth, the idea being that if they can learn more about the deep sea right here at home, they'll have a better understanding of what could be in deep sea environments on other planets. They also get a chance to test equipment in a similar environment to space. Now, NASA hasn't come out and said this on their own, but there have been some anonymous whistleblowers posting about experiences they've had on dives, with stories about running into dangerous creatures while on these deep sea explorations, intelligent creatures resembling humanoid cephalopods who seem to intentionally sabotage equipment. Now, are these stories real, or are they just some internet fun? Well, you know, about 80% of the ocean is unexplored, and seeing as it takes up about 70% of the planet overall, hey, I could see there being something down there other than dumb fish.
At our halfway point today, we have an underwater volcano threatening to split the Earth open. Light stuff, you know? While generally underwater volcanoes provide hydrogen, sulfide, and other minerals to deep sea life, allowing thriving ecosystems to form at unforgivable depths, one volcano in particular, located just off of the coast of Tonga, seems to be kind of doing the opposite. On January 15th of 2022, big year, the volcano exploded with a force equal to 15 million tons of TNT. The eruption was among the most powerful ever recorded, and it sent water vapor 83 miles up into the stratosphere, causing temporary rises to temperatures in the surrounding area. Not only that, but the eruption reshaped the sea floor. The rim around the volcano had been replaced by a cavern that travels down 850 meters into the Earth's crust. Hopefully it doesn't get any deeper, because if it does, kind of like your ex, we're gonna have some serious issues.
There's some pretty intriguing stories about possible alien bases underwater as well. Take the Solomon Islands for example. There have been stories for hundreds of years about strange objects hovering above the islands and then descending down into the waters below. Locals on these islands also have stories about terrifying creatures stalking the forests, coming out of intricate cave systems underground, and this is just one example. There are said to be alien bases deep under the Alaska ice. Strange UFO-type objects have been spotted maneuvering through waters across the globe. We have a whole video on it. Top 10 mysterious UFOs discovered underwater. Check it out. So perhaps NASA already knows about alien life that's taken up residency here on Earth. Maybe the deep sea is their domain. I ain't saying this is what I believe. By the way, I'm just throwing some ideas at you.
Next on our list, we have NASA's discovery of a city of lights found in the middle of the ocean, in an area with no land or electricity. In 2012, a map of the Earth at night was published by the Earth Observatory in collaboration with NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Everything seemed relatively normal except for one area off the coast of Argentina. You guessed it, a city of lights was shown on the map in a shape that almost resembles an arrowhead, or maybe like the Eiffel Tower. Anyways, it was weird, especially considering the fact that in the area in which the lights are shown, like I said, there's no land. I am repeating myself a lot today. NASA claimed that the lights were a result of fishing boats in the area, but I think it's pretty obvious that NASA is not to be trusted, as they do seem to have a pretty extensive history of secret keeping going on. Plus, the only images ever released of the area were those taken by a satellite at night. I have a feeling something else is going on, but let me know what you think. Do you believe the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, who I have not one, not two, but 3 videos on exposing leaked information they wanted to keep secret? I don't.
So it's not just undiscovered intelligent life forms deep sea divers have to worry about. It's all the primitive creatures as well, some known and some less known. Sure, there are wild stories about humanoid cephalopods attacking researchers down below or alien bases down there, but while those stories are fun, there is the actual very real possibility of running into something big that could pose a threat to the safety of the crew. Luckily, great whites don't really swim all that deep down, but there's other stuff going on down there. Giant squids are real, and who knows what else could be lurking down there. In the words of Qui-Gon Jinn, there's always a bigger fish. Wise words. You could have giant sea serpents, giant man-eating deep-sea piranhas that can see in the dark. Point is, space is dangerous, sure, but at least you don't have sentient life forms floating around the spacecraft on a constant basis.
And finally, we have the fact that in 2011, 87 World War II explosives made their way out of the ocean and on to Calshot Beach in England, surprising and terrifying locals and tourists alike. Although I'm not sure why you'd want a vacation on the beaches of England. Isn't like the whole country's thing like being really rainy? Anyways, the many explosive devices were managed by a 5-man bomb squad, which seems a little too relaxed if you ask me. 5 men, 87 bombs. Besides the point, an exclusion zone of 1,000 meters was set up around Calshot Beach to ensure the safety of civilians, while the devices were stacked 300 meters offshore during low tide. When high tide came, they were detonated. The bomb squad continued to comb the beach, the waters, the shores, and a little bit deeper, but luckily, I think no more were found. I think because if they weren't found and they're still there, that's pretty dangerous. If you think that's bad, allow me to remind you that to date, the United States alone has reported, keyword reported, 6 missing nuclear bombs that were lost to the ocean. NASA knows this. I mean, it's public information, so obviously, but I'm betting they probably know the real number too. So I guess it makes sense that they are doing their best to avoid the ocean and to get the heck off this planet as a whole. I mean, if you're gonna die by radiation, might as well do it with a good view of the cosmos, right?
Finally though, what about all the mysterious threats in the deep sea? Things that we just can't quite explain. All the triangles referring to strange sections of water where odd stuff seems to happen all the time. The Bermuda Triangle is of course the most well known, but there are others like the Lake Michigan Triangle, for example. Not that NASA would be exploring Lake Michigan. Places where disappearances seem to happen. Planes will disappear while flying overhead. Ships seem to have accidents or just vanish altogether. Some blame it on treacherous weather. Others think there could be some kind of strange electromagnetic interference in these areas that messes with equipment. These are just theories, of course, but there are so many mysterious incidents in the Bermuda Triangle alone. The disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945, the disappearances of the USS Cyclops in 1918. In 1948, Flight DC-3 went missing, never to be seen again. The Witchcraft vessel in 1967. The list goes on and on. The ocean is vast, mysterious, and dangerous. Most of it is still unexplored, yes, and it's not hard to see why.
I feel a Bermuda Triangle video coming on. Oh.
I was gonna do that voice for the entire intro and I just can't muster it. I'm sorry, folks.
What's the creepiest thing you've seen in the water that makes you want to go, nope, and get the heck out of there? Let us know in the comments. I've been your host, Hannah Thompson.
And I've been your other host, James.
Bye!
Catch you next time.
Create a video using exactly this script. Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next! It's about real-life families that are scarier than the Manson family. This video is about the creepiest families in the world and how creepy they are. Click the video now to find out more. You won't regret it.